Okay, that should work. Okay, welcome everybody to our live with Christina Kansavalos. I hope I said her
Good
last
job.
name correctly. But she's an integrative psychotherapist, and she's going to join us to talk about mold toxicity and how mold exposure can impact mental health and may cause certain symptoms or even impede your healing journey if you're not addressing it, if it's part of what's going on in your life and environment. So before I get into any more, just so everyone knows, this is not medical advice, and what we're talking about shouldn't be used to diagnose or treat any disease. It's just a conversation and hopefully some useful information for you along the way. So hi, Christina. Thanks so much. Welcome. And
Thank you
we'd
so
love for
much
you
for
to.
having me.
Oh, no problem. This is great. Like, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and I know affects many of our customers. So, do you want to start by telling everyone a little bit about your background and maybe even a little bit about your personal mold story and how that kind of helped this whole subject come to light for you?
Sure. So, yeah, for those who don't know, I'm an integrative psychotherapist at Begin Within Today. That's my private practice. And, I didn't go to grad school thinking that I was going to specialize in mold, in healing mental health affected by toxic mold. It all happened because I myself was tremendously affected. I had Lyme disease and was really ill. And as it turned out, I had a high level of toxic mold in the home I was living in, and it was just a total disaster in how it affected my physical health, my mental health, my relationship, my job. I mean, everything. So I understand how this can affect you on literally every level possible, and I was left, without a home, and ultimately ended up in the desert after hopping around trying to find a safe place to live. And that was a big part of the reason I feel like I was able to fully heal, was because I got to a place that was, low to no mold in the home. Um, and I mean, I just remember fantasizing about finding a provider who got it. I fantasized about so much, a safe living environment and people who understood me and all of the things. So I basically became the provider I did not have, in conjunction with all the other modalities and supports I had at that time. And yeah, I went into this. So here I am.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, sometimes, the thing that breaks you becomes, your purpose. So it sounds like, I don't know why it is with mold, but I feel like that's sort of a theme for many of the people in this space. So, um, but if we like, I don't know for anyone joining, if you can, and I know that there's no way to cover all of this or to explain it in depth in this live, but maybe talk a little bit about how mold exposure to mycotoxins, like in particular, can contribute to neuroinflammation and what that might feel like.
Yeah. Um, so, I think, and I'm also going to add in here, right? Because so often we're in a home, including myself, when one person is affected and the other isn't, and there's just so many question marks. So I'm going to kind of start with how this happens in the first place, and then what that looks like. So typically, like, it's a combination of genetic predisposition, um, immune system reactivity, nervous system regulation, prior health history. And then we look at genetic variations, and how do we detox? How does our body respond to mold compared to sort of the average person. So susceptibility is very multifactorial. So again, immune, neurological, genetic, environmental. And then what happens is when we are more susceptible, it can cause an immune activation. So that in and of itself triggers this inflammatory cytokine response. This inflammatory response crosses the blood-brain barrier, and then that alters neurotransmitter metabolism. And so that then affects all kinds of things like our serotonin availability, our dopamine signaling, our glutamate activity. So we see an increase in anxiety, we see sleep disturbances, we see depression, we see brain fog, and again, so much more. It can vary depending on the person and their history and what they already have going on. Do they already have mast cell? Do they already have like a high histamine response? What does their internal toxic load look like at this moment in time? And what did their nervous system look like before they were exposed to this level of mold?
And somebody asked what type of mold, and I'm not sure. I don't know if you want to answer that, but I mean, I'm not sure it. I don't think we're talking about just sort of like, outdoor molds as much as we're talking about water damaged molds, like in a indoor environment. Is that I'm just want to, make sure. I mean, there's definitely the allergic response to mold, but I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit more, just in terms of like what kind of mold our conversation is centered around.
So, I mean, I can't exactly say the type of mold because, usually it's toxic mold. However, there is research around even just patients reacting to non-toxic mold. So
Mhm.
really depends on the person's biology and how they respond to each mycotoxin differently, and to
Yeah,
mold. Some people are literally allergic to mold from the get-go. So
yeah. And also, we're kind of talking too about like the combination of um environmental mold and mycotoxin producing mold, which is more of a toxic load situation, sort of like almost like a being poisoned response from the body too. So those things are important. Like when Christina talks about like sort of the brain on fire and the inflammation piece of it all. Okay, and so then I wanted to talk to you a little bit too about like the case studies that are in your article, and we'll link to Christina's article so you can read it more in depth. But how you integrate mold awareness into your practice, and as a practicing integrative psychotherapist, is it something that you do with all patients now, like to almost take it off the table before you begin? Is it that important?
I definitely feel that way as an integrative therapist because I have seen it impact so many people within and outside of my practice, and then of course like on a personal level. So I can't of course force anyone to test their environment for mold, but it is very much highly encouraged. Um, because so often when someone leaves an environment that they're not thriving in, we see a difference. We see symptoms decrease.
So when a patient comes to you, do you automatically have them screen for mold, or do you wait till it feels like they're not responding to typical like the typical psychotherapy? And you can actually talk a little bit more about that too, like the modalities you use in your practice. But I was just wondering, you know, just out of my own personal curiosity, like how quickly you sort of hone in on or address the mold piece or the possible mold piece.
Well, sometimes in a consultation, it's addressed immediately. So it really is person dependent. Like some clients, patients come to me already with the knowledge my home has mold, I'm trying to get out of it, or we're looking for a
Mhm.
new place. We just landed in a new place. Everyone comes to me with different backgrounds and awareness around this. But I always look at the timeline. Like if someone tells me their physical and or mental health symptoms began when they moved into their apartment or their home, they notice an increase. That's sort of a yellow, if not red flag to me of
Mhm.
maybe we should, check in on that and just see, because if that is a variable, it can be a very important variable to someone's healing journey. Um, and a lot of the doctors that I end up, working with, who see a lot of the same people I do, feel the same way, share the same sentiment.
Okay. Well, and so what are the actionable steps that you use with clients, like as far as testing? Um, if you want to just kind of, we can go through these together because I love it when we give people sort of like things that they can do right away, just from listening to us today to sort of take those first steps. So, as far as testing, what do you like to use in your practice and recommend to most people?
So there are so many ways to test your home, and I think it's really important that, whoever I work with chooses the way that feels best to them. Like the Petri dishes, for example. I've had
Mhm.
many clients use that, and that shows quite a bit of mold. Then they do further testing. I just had a client use a mold sniffing dog, a
Mhm.
dog that was able to find things that the company they had, like, I don't know, a month prior couldn't find these areas that the dog, found. And in this case, my client felt super validated because we noticed her symptoms started when she moved into her home. So it's choosing the testing method. You can start small and go that way. Something else is, testing out, before making a move, before remediating, maybe testing out a different place also first to see if there is a difference when you leave. I had another client move out for a month to a home nearby just to see if she would feel differently, and she noticed about I think she said like 5 to 10% decrease in symptoms, which is significant when you're really not feeling well. Um,
Yeah.
so it's testing, it's taking the small steps. We're not trying to overburden the nervous system even more, because when it comes to our home, right, that's our attachment, that's our safety, and that can really dysregulate us. So just taking one step at a time towards figuring this out is the best, really pacing yourself.
Yeah. Well, and also, and then the second sort of thing in the article that you discuss are some of the products like of ours that you recommend and use with clients. Because I do know and I'm very sensitive to the fact that when you're dealing with mental health issues, when you're not feeling well, um, it's really hard to, especially when the word remediation comes into the conversation, sort of get your mind around that and develop steps to take a plan there. And then also just um, the isolation that a lot of mental health issues bring. And so a lot of people are isolated in their homes. And then when they feel like they have to leave, I don't know, it might just become like too much. So, um, just if we want to go through a couple of the things that you recommend of ours, and the article Christina talks about like the mold spray, the laundry additive, the candles, and the wipes. Um, I don't know what kind of things that you typically use them for, like how you recommend them to your clients, but sometimes they can be like a helpful stopgap if they can't leave or remediate right away. So, um,
Yes. Def Definitely. It's like it's something is better than nothing type of thing, right? Like if you are being told you need to leave, but there are various reasons as to why people cannot leave their home. It could be a financial barrier. I mean, so many reasons. And, we can at least attempt to reduce the mold spore count in the home, in our clothes. So like I'm a big fan of your laundry additive. I do not travel without it at this point. Um, the wipes are amazing. The candles are my are my candles. So I use these to mitigate, what is there and to prevent as well.
Yeah. Well, and I was also curious, like from a mental health perspective, is sometimes just the act of doing something that you know is beneficial, like just using the products or the cleaning, does that also help you? I don't know, from a bigger like perspective, feel more in control and to kind of calm some of that nervous system stuff that goes on?
I would say so. Like generally speaking, a person will feel more empowered by like mitigating the toxic load in the environment or in their
Mhm.
body or anywhere else, But there's also this line when it doesn't become something we're obsessing over either.
Right.
It's like we are doing what we can with what we have and trusting that that is enough at this moment in time.
Okay. Sort of more of a more than nothing approach, but don't like to where it doesn't become your whole personality is like cleaning and mold mitigation.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Mold. I've spoken to mold professionals. There's no, from my understanding, there's no such thing as a 100% mold-free home. It's all about, you know, this balancing act and keeping it as low as possible. Um, but yeah, we have molds outside, molds everywhere, and I think it's important to remember that we're just attempting to mitigate it, especially when we're more sensitive or we have challenges in detoxing it. If just for those of us more susceptible, including myself, even when we're traveling, we can go into an Airbnb or a hotel where
Yeah.
we sense it. It's like, okay, what can we do if, I've had to leave many places as well, but if I feel like it's manageable, that's like, especially when I use your products. Because I'm like, this I know is going to mitigate it. Like I'm not going
Yeah.
to have such a response tomorrow. Like I know my mast cell isn't going to completely act up.
Well, and I think I love that you talk about that you've had to leave some places. Um, could you give our audience today like maybe some helpful tips on how to do that? Because I find that so many of us that are mold sensitive are also very sensitive to other people and their feelings and are people pleasers. And so even just the thought of having to say, to almost stand up for yourself and say, this space that I'm supposed to be staying in is not like my body does not like it. It's not safe for me. So I'm going to have to find something else. I mean, do you have tips on how you work with clients on how to do that in a way that doesn't feel outside of their comfort zone?
Look, when we have a severely activated nervous system that's been in fight or flight for some time,
Mhm.
often our entire lives, saying no or speaking up to ourselves can feel like a tiger is chasing us. It can feel really, really, really scary, which is why I feel like it's so important to, start neural retraining, nervous system retraining, work with a therapist who is mold literate to essentially hold your hand and give you that co-regulation, give you that empowerment, give you that umph, that little push, like you can do it, you deserve, you are worthy of speaking up for yourself. Speaking up for yourself does not mean is life not life or death. It's life. It's you are the most important person in your life. You deserve to speak up for yourself. You deserve to prioritize your health and your well-being, even if this other person doesn't understand it. Because the truth of the matter is, most people don't even know what mold is, or let alone toxic mold and SIRS and how that impacts us on a mental and physical level. So we're going to be up against that most of the time. So my whole thing is speaking up for yourself in a way that feels grounded and good, and you can take the feelings out of it and just literally give a person educate. There's tons of articles. Hand them the literature on on what you're experiencing and what you're moving through, because a lot of that can't quite, some of it can be debated and argued, of course. There's always going to be two sides to everything, but for the most part, these are like scientific literature that has been proven. This affects us.
And so with the neural retraining, do you want to talk a little bit more about that, what that is? And do you have programs that you recommend? I know there are many out there. And for those who don't really know what it is, want to explain it a little bit?
Yeah. So when I have someone come to me, I don't think I've yet to see this not be the case, that they're stuck in a fight or flight response. Their nervous system is completely dysregulated, but fight or flight doesn't quite look the way we think it does. Often there's two other F's. There's a freeze response and there's a fawning response. You mentioned it just a moment ago. The people pleasing, the person, the type A personality, the person who needs to get the, perfect grades, needs to do the best at work, like constantly hits that override button. And then we have the freeze response, like feeling really stuck and overwhelmed and like this is just too much, like a deer in headlights, especially around their health. So I see patients really oscillate between these two. And what that looks like, and I said it earlier, was like it's like having a tiger chasing you for literally years and years, and this can stem from all kinds of things, but I especially see it related to trauma,
Yeah.
from childhood, from teen years, etc. And when we do not get the healing and the support that we need and require at that time, we stay in this chronic stress response. And what that does is it basically, imagine just cortisol pumping through us a lot all of the time. And cortisol in and of itself is inflammatory. So what we're trying to switch things up. The thing we're up against is, okay, we already have this kind of as a baseline, and then now we have chronic illness, which is traumatic. Having chronic illness is very traumatic. Often we're not valid, our experiences are not validated. We are gaslit. We are not believed, be it by our providers or our friends and family. It's a very traumatic experience. So we stay in this trauma response until we switch it up. We basically need to tell our nervous system that in this moment in time, things are not perfect, but I am safe. I'm not actually being chased by a tiger as far as I can see. How do we do this? So there are various neural retraining programs. Think of it like physical therapy for your nervous system,
Mhm.
to convince your nervous system that you are safe. It is okay to heal. Because the thing is, when we're being chased by a tiger, our our safety is the front burner, our healing is the back burner. We need,
Mhm.
once the body, the brain, the nervous system realizes we're not being chased, healing can now go on to the front burner. I'm not saying healing cannot happen concurrently. I'm just saying it doesn't take a front seat. So once I see it take a front seat, I really start to see healing in any person I'm working with happen a lot more rapidly. But this is a commitment. There's so many programs. I'll go through the one I did. I received it for free. It was Dynamic Neural Retraining System, which is DNRS.
Mhm.
When I first heard about it, I was like, I don't know. I was so sick and I was desperate, and I saw it worked for my friend, and I'm like, she's letting me use the DVDs for free. Why not? And I would say that was, there's various things that saved me in this process, and I know for a fact that was one of them. But Primal Trust is another one people seem
Mhm.
to really like because it's more paced. So that's usually the one I'm recommending now, because across the board, I have positive feedback and remarks about it. But Gupta is another one. So DNRS and Gupta are front loaded, meaning they give you like all of the content right away. versus some other ones are paced. They're all the same, but different. What I tell people to do is pick the one, look it up, pick the one that resonates with your nervous system, basically.
Okay.
But the
And
goal
so are
is, the
these,
goal in this is that, yeah, go, sorry. Go
oh,
ahead.
oh, sorry. I was just going to ask, are these, is it sort of like a set program and exercises that you kind of like go through and do every day? Kind of
Yeah.
like you're saying physical therapy. Okay. So you have to be ready to sort of make a commitment to it when you start it, or
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 If you're, I'm like, if you're going to do it 100%, like this is more about consistency than to see results. It requires that level of consistency. And there's other aspects to it as well. It's like really kind of re-identifying how you feel about chronic illness, about mold, about everything. Like I got to the point where I was afraid of everything. I mean, I was allergic to everything. I was down to 20 ingredients I could safely eat without my EpiPen being in hand. I couldn't be around someone who used detergent. My mast cell was so activated. So I was in the house just afraid of everything. And the irony was my house had had mold. So
Yeah.
the thing that felt the safest was actually the scariest. And so I had to repattern how I felt about food, how I felt about scents, how I felt about the sun. I mean, so many different things that I was, really deeply nervous for and afraid of. And that's what this helps with. It's a repatterning. It's reversing the snowball effect, because if we do not nip this in the bud, when we start reacting to everything, we become so hypervigilant that everything is frightening, scary, is a threat, basically, then it's
Yeah.
just going to pick up more and more things until we say it stops here. We're not doing this anymore. So that's kind of how neural retraining works, but it's a daily practice. There's like some meditation, and I mean, there are various programs. There's some that are even faith-based now.
Yeah.
There's so many different types. Some that like target just like CFS, chronic fatigue
Chronic
syndrome.
fatigue.
They have
Yeah.
a Yeah, they just do chronic fatigue. Like that's what they specialize in. So you can literally type in what you have in neural retraining program and likely find it.
And we had a question that came in like later last night about gosh, and I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's kind of like brain mapping. Am I saying that right? It's
Right.
passive and you put, I forget what it's called, and I'm not thinking of it correctly. I'll try to think of it, but it's when you watch a
Okay.
screen and you have I think it's like you put on sort of like not a helmet, but like a soft thing with wires, brain spotting, someone said. Um, I don't know what it's called, but
Brain spotting is
I
like
went,
like kind of like EMDR. It's like a trauma
okay.
informed
Okay.
modality. It's similar to EMDR. It's a it's a trauma informed modality that can help with I call it irrigating trauma. And
Biofeedback. That's the right. Do you use
biofeedback. Yeah,
yes.
biofeedback uh, can be helpful. It's not the same as neural retraining. And I've had
Okay.
people come to me who've had years of it, and it doesn't get to the that aspect of
Okay.
the root, like just the survival response, the limbic system, the reptilian brain wanting to get to safety constantly.
Okay.
But it
Because
can
we
help
had
with mitigating stress and anxiety and so much more. It's fantastic. It's not the same. That's all I want to say.
gotcha. Okay. We had just had a question about it, so I'm sorry that I couldn't think of the name, you guys. Thanks for your help.
No, all
And
good.
and then another thing you write about in your article that I want to touch on, well, two other things before we move on to questions are journaling and how you find that helpful. If you want to talk a little bit about that, because I know that this is like something that's near and dear to you, especially because you've got like a journal. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I created a journal when I was couchbound because I really wanted to work on the mind, body, spirit. I understood how fierce it was in aspects of healing, and I know how important it is to get things out, not keep things in. And so I looked for a mind, body, spirit journal. I couldn't find one, which is why I was really sick. I was just started creating my own prompts based off of research, like something I was grateful for the day, but also like tracking my health and how I was doing, just to be able to connect dots between like pain and discomfort and allergic reactions, all of these things. But as I did it, it felt really, I noticed how empowering it felt, and I continued to just do research on journaling as a mindfulness activity, and it is incredible. Like they've done studies that they did a study on people with wounds, and the ones who journaled healed faster than the ones who didn't. So it can heal us on a mind and body level, and it's just wonderful for reducing anxiety and yeah, aiding and helping with depression.
So
So yeah.
how is your journal designed? Because I'm really interested in it. Like it doesn't say a ton about it on the website, but I'm really curious about, when you open it up, the difference between that and just like blank pages, for someone who's interested in maybe getting one to get started. Um, if you want to talk about
Yeah.
that.
So like I created it for it to be specifically brain fog friendly. And
Mhm.
so it has like the same prompts daily, and asking about physical things happening, mental health things happening, mood and so forth. And then more on a spiritual level. And it's the same prompts daily in order to be able to track and see if there's connections between things. And as I would go on and I hear this like regularly, it's, okay, perhaps, this symptom is still there, but I noticed a decrease in this one. I really wouldn't have noticed without the journal. Once I went back to that page, I noticed, or I noticed my handwriting is better, like that cognitive piece.
Yeah.
We kind of get to see it also physically play out in the journal.
I love that because I really struggled when I was really sick with looping behaviors. And I wish that I'd had a
Mm.
journal every day to help interrupt that a little bit. Even though you're writing to the same prompts, it kind of interrupts some of that, some of those like negative patterns that can start happening and derail you. So that's awesome. Okay. And then the last thing we'll talk about before we get to everybody's questions is about finding support. Um, and if you want to talk about some helpful supports for people, um, like I guess support, and you also talk about safer housing. So if you want to hit on those two things, because you do offer some really great um, recommendations, especially for people who feel very stuck.
Yeah. So for we went over like the neural retraining piece that's specific to the nervous system. It's different than therapy. And when it comes to meeting with a therapist or a coach, coaches are also amazing, but they're not trauma. Well, they can be trauma informed, sorry, but they don't have the training that a psychotherapist would. So, one gets deeper and deeper and deeper. But even starting with the coach, like something is like a better than nothing in terms of having that support, having someone actually listen to you and know what you're talking about. You don't have to give them subtitles is such a nice feeling when you're going through something like this. Um, and then finding a therapist who is chronic illness, and hopefully in this case mold literate, can be huge, right? Because they bring so many components, and especially if they are trauma and somatic informed. I always say you want to find those all together. But there's chronic illness therapist has a directory of chronic illness therapists, and I believe even coaches. So that's a amazing place. And then the San Diego Lyme through Bay Area Lyme Foundation, we have a free Lyme empowerment circle every month, but it's not just for Lyme. It's for mold and other chronic illnesses. And it's really focused on empowerment. Like it's very, to me, solution focused and nervous system focused. Like there's always a somatic meditation involved. Some kind of prompt, and then what is working for people, right? So sometimes we focus on what is going wrong rather than what is going right. And that's a beautiful way right there to repattern the nervous system, to stop focusing on just the negatives, that negativity bias, to really start, I always say, like, start exercising the positivity bias and focusing on what you're grateful for, what is going well in your life, even if it's the sun was out for a minute today, anything.
Yeah.
Um,
I love
so
recommendations on
those are ways.
like, yeah, I love any kind of positive group recommendations because there can be the negative side of, groups on things like Facebook and stuff where sometimes it gives you other things to worry about that you hadn't even that you hadn't even thought before, rather than helpful positive feedback. So that's great.
Yeah,
And then
I mean, I use the examples. I was in a Facebook group and I just, you were just trying to find people who get it, right? Like I understand why we all enter into these groups, but I also want to say some can be incredibly toxic. I remember I posted one time, like in a mast cell group, like I'm considering neural retraining. This was right when I was considering it many years ago. And someone's like, oh, well, if you have anaphylaxis, it's going to make you ignore it or something like that. And that actually made me postpone. And that's not the case, by the way. It wouldn't have you ignore anaphylaxis, but I'm just making a point about these groups
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. And I think sometimes groups, at least with a moderator who's knowledgeable are probably better sometimes than those without, because it can help sort of buffer the negativity, I guess is a nice way of saying it. But yeah, I definitely encourage people to find groups that that when you interact with them, you come away feeling better than before, rather than more scared or feeling like you're doing everything wrong every time every time you join the group. So for sure. And then you do talk a little bit about the safe housing, the safe spaces website. Do you want to tell everyone about that? I loved that. I thought that was very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I found out about this like within the past couple of years. It's called sensitiverentals.com, and they don't make any money off of it. I believe it's a couple, and I can't recall their names at the top of my head. They're really sweet. Um, and they just have houses who are supposed to be, sensitive friendly, post their rentals on their website, and it goes through a range of questions, from what products they use, materials, um, what kind of plates they have,
Oh,
like
wow.
every aspect of a home, because everyone has a different, it's not just mold. There can be other sensitivities, even EMF sensitivities. I mean, there's a whole entire list. So of course, they've kind of recently started, so they don't have like a ton of homes on there, but I love that it's an option. And yeah, that it exists. So that's a place to start. Otherwise, yeah, my fantasy is someone building a compound someplace where people could just go and focus on their healing is yet to happen. I hope it happens someday.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Well, I mean, I think that's great. I mean, even especially with people, my son, when we were going through everything, had very specific sensory issues. So even just like knowing what kind of sheets were being used for someone like me during that time would have been fantastic. So I love that resource. That's awesome. Okay, we've got about 20 minutes. So we're going to get to everyone's questions as best we can. First, we're going to tackle the ones that came in like via email and social media. So just be patient because I promise we'll try to get to everybody. Why are some people more sensitive than others to mold as far as mental health?
Yeah, so it's kind of what I said like in the beginning, right? It's multifactorial. It can be your immune system in general, your genetics, uh, various environmental variables. You know, if you already have something like mast cell and or Lyme disease or another autoimmune condition, if you have something like MTFHR and like I'm trying to think of what else right now, that basically don't allow you to detox as effectively as someone who doesn't have that as a mutation. It can also, apply to, your experiences with trauma and how your nervous system was impacted from that. So it's a little bit of everything, and it's why one person in the house will have absolutely no symptoms, and then the next person, like I was, is feels completely defeated by it.
Okay. What's the next question? Sorry, I've got to scroll all the way up to the top. What are the biological mechanisms behind mood changes from mold exposure?
Uh, so we were saying that mold related mood changes can be sort of mediated through neuroinflammation, immune activation. So it causes that cytokine response that passes the blood-brain barrier, and then that alters the neurotransmitter metabolism. So, like I was saying, serotonin, dopamine are altered. These are things that impact our mood. And then we'll also have what else? Yeah,
You
I was going to
mentioned,
say mast cells too. It
yeah, and you
impacts
mentioned
mast
the
cells, and
the
we have a high histamine response,
well, and I was
and
also
that
going to say
impacts our sleep and cognitive. Yeah.
I also was really interested when you mentioned the CFS earlier, the chronic fatigue syndrome, um, because that seems, somewhat like a biological mechanism when you're like, when you have nothing in the tank, I would think that that would affect your mental health in big, very big ways. So, um,
Yeah, I like chronic illness in and of itself is traumatic. You're naturally going to the average person is going to have mental health symptoms related to their chronic illness because of various factors. But, you know, the chronic inflammation affects mitochondrial function, right? So that restricts the cellular energy in the brain. So that's the brain fog. That's also that fatigue. And then yeah, when you're feeling slow, when you're feeling unwell, you just don't feel good. It's not a fun feeling. It's hard.
um,
This is really hard. And then the grief, right? We didn't even touch on the grief, but grief's a huge aspect of this. You often feel like you lost the person you were before this whole thing happened, and it's awful.
yeah, I love that you said that. That hits me. um, True. You just feel like I mean, you have to come to terms with it on some level that it's the normal for now, but it doesn't have to be forever. But it's definitely there are days where it doesn't feel like it's not going to be forever for a lot of people, especially when you
Yeah.
can't get out of the environment. So, okay, let's see. What kinds of symptoms should people be concerned about? I guess this means
Uh,
in terms of that they would be triggered by mold.
yeah. So what I would like, so if we see like this sudden onset of things like Let's think, panic, anxiety, intrusive thoughts, right? Depression, cognitive decline. Like all of a sudden, this person who's so sharp can't get a word out of their mouth. They can't recall certain things that happened recently or in the past. They feel like they are emotionally volatile. Um, Derealization, not feeling like yourself, like, I just don't feel like myself since I hear this, like since I moved into this place or since I started working at this job. Um, and then like heightened sensory sensitivity, kind of mention that with your son. That can also be a big one. Insomnia that doesn't feel physiologically driven is another one. But
Oh,
in
that's
like
great. Yeah.
instability, yeah, memory impairment. I think the big one is you notice this new patterning and worse or a worsening since you started spending time in a particular environment.
Okay. That's very helpful. What should I expect in the first few sessions if I decide to work with you?
So first and foremost, it's just going to be about the nervous system, and that can be for some time. Like the goal of, and I was saying this earlier with neural retraining and in therapy, is not so much to get into this. There's an obsession with becoming regulated, right? Getting into a regulated nervous system state, out of a fight or flight stress response. But the fact of the matter is we want our nervous system to react if need be. If it needs to go into fight or flight, we want it to do that. So what we're aiming for is a flexible nervous system that responds in a healthy way and bounces back. The issue is often we struggle with bouncing back. Everything feels so scary and frightening and anxiety inducing. So that would be like neural retraining for me is a non-negotiable. I don't care what program you choose. I just have the person I'm working with do it as we're working together. Um, and then yeah, we're trying to create this safety. I so often hear like you're the first person who believe me, you're the first person I feel safe with telling, these things to or talking to about them. And that to me is so healing to the nervous system. That's that co-regulation that they're feeling and sensing. And, with time, we get to start doing the more somatic and trauma irrigation work where we're getting to the root of the dis-ease in the body. Like where did this start? Where did the dysregulation start? But that takes time. We can't open up Pandora's box. We have to do it
Yeah.
slowly and surely. We have to make sure that they feel safe in their surroundings, in their environment. And that can take a little bit of time, and that's okay. Like everyone comes to me in a different place in their life. And I just meet them exactly where they are.
Well, and everyone who's asking, all links to all of this, including where to find Christina, are if you click on the article link, they're there, all of them. So please feel free to check that out or just to bookmark it. How do you differentiate between psychological symptoms caused by stress and those potentially influenced by environmental exposures?
That's a really good question because so often, right, there's this intersection. So I'm looking first at temporal correlation, like did symptoms begin after a move, after a renovation, after water damage, after illness, and then physiological markers. So have they been physiologically feeling different since they were there? So like more chemical sensitivity, temperature dysregulation. Trying to think. Oh, like sinus congestion, right? Mine tinnitus. That was a big one for me.
Mhm.
Fatigue, um, and then kind of symptom quality. So like agitation, if you feel wired but tired all the time, cognitively impaired. Trying to think of what else. Yeah, and then the environment. So do the symptoms improve at all when they leave the environment? Like once I figured out mold was my issue, I'm just giving this example. I noticed when I would go down the street to this, to this coffee shop, like the one place I felt okay and safe in, that my symptoms decreased a little bit. I didn't notice that before because, and I was told my place did not have mold. I want to make that clear.
Yeah.
I was told that. I was lied to. So later on, my doctors were like, "No, this isn't right. We need to retest." But once I had that information, it was validated. I was able to now see these correlations. So it's something to attune yourself to, like really looking at the timeline of when and where your symptoms started if you were to create this timeline. So basically, like stress related symptoms, I'm looking at them being more tied to like life events, and relational dynamics. And then I would say like the environmental driven symptoms, like feel more biologically abrupt, like they just kind of came out of nowhere. And again, these things can coexist. So
Yeah.
a chronic environment like this can be traumatic in and of itself. Going through mold like this is traumatic. um, eh, how can it not, for various reasons.
Yeah.
So one impacts the other, but I would say those are the two. It's like really looking at that timeline. Is this
Yeah. I
related
think
to an event, or is it more to my environment?
that was really helpful. I mean, I everything you said resounded with me because there were things that I had always dealt with, but when there was a mold exposure going on, it was like those on steroids plus other biological things that I'd never had to deal with. So for sure. Okay. Let's see. How can therapy help with the emotional impact of dealing with mold exposure, stress, fear, uncertainty, trauma?
Um, so, and I mentioned this before, but I think medical trauma is the biggest piece. Like just meeting with a provider who believes you and who gets it, who you do not have to explain anything to. You can use these terms and they know what you're talking about. They're not going to tell you it's all in your head, which is hilarious to me because your head is attached to your body. And so it's it's still in your body. Um, but like the isolation, the grief, the way it affects um, dynamics, be it in your home or at work or in your friend group, um, fear, existential fear, like the high level of fear so many of us experience. So the goal is to help regulate the nervous system and to later process the trauma, sometimes ongoing trauma, depending on the person's situation, and really restore a sense of agency, of hope, of empowerment. So we're reducing hypervigilance and addressing catastrophic thinking, which is that the limbic system, really looking for the worst in everything to protect you. That's what it's doing. It's our bodies are phenomenally smart and intelligent. They're just trying their best to protect us. Sometimes we just have to go in there and fine tune some things, and that's what we get to do with a therapist. And yeah, just processing our experience and helping with resources and helping with this decision making, like just getting support around all of these areas that might be a bit more challenging to receive from the average person. And when the body feels unpredictable, the mind tends to just spiral. That's what, because it's like, what is happening, what is going on, I don't know. I don't know what this is. And having someone there by you to you know just walk with you through it makes a really big difference. The therapy will interrupt that feedback loop. You kind of mentioned that before, and supports the resilience during recovery.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you support clients who are dealing with ongoing environmental or health uncertainty?
Yeah, so that's always a tough one when you're like still in we said this earlier, right? We were in the environment, and for whatever reason you can't get out of it just yet. So what we want to create is consistency, predictability for the nervous system, doing things that feel really good really grounding, and like doing various practices, starting neural retraining. I Again, I was living in mold. I'd started neural retraining before knowing my place had mold, and I noticed a huge decrease in my symptoms. So I'm proof that, you can see a decrease even if you're in an environment with a high level of toxic mold. So daily nervous system practices, and then practicing like environmental boundaries where you can, like mitigating it with your products, for example, or leaving the house or the work environment or whatever, wherever this area is, um, when you can, and really focus, like being focused on the solution rather than the problem is
Mhm.
another big one, and focused on what is working for you versus what isn't working for you, just like trying to cultivate that stability.
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to get everybody in here. Okay, how long does it usually take to see improvement in mood or cognitive symptoms? Um, I'm sure this is very variable, especially if like whether or not someone can leave versus, stay and all that stuff. So,
Yeah, it's so dependent on the person and where they are in this journey. I mean, I have seen someone's symptoms improve within a week's, and I'm saying weeks, meaning like 2, 3 weeks time. And then for others, it's taken a little bit longer, be it because they're still in a toxic environment or something else, but it can take some time. I would say we don't get sick. We don't generally get sick overnight. We don't expect to, thrive overnight either. It's a process. It's it's not linear. Like I consider it a spiral in and of itself.
yeah, and there are definitely ups and downs. That's for sure. That's why I think
Yeah.
therapy is also really
Yeah.
important to like, when you're in a
Yes.
down time to, help you remember how far you've come. Sometimes you need that. Um, okay.
I like to tell people when they feel like they've taken 100, they're like, I've taken 1,000 steps back, like this new symptom crops up. I always tell them, and you've taken it, maybe you've taken 1,000 steps, but to the side, because you don't ever start from zero. You have experience, you have knowledge, you have wisdom that you did not have when this first began, this first happened. And
Yeah.
it's important to remember it, but like there are biological and psychological contributors to all of this, so we really have to take this holistic integrative approach, and ensure that we are being supported on all levels wherever we can.
Um, how can I know if my symptoms are from past or present mold exposure? My symptoms fit so many other causes. Oh, that's kind of a hard, that's a hard one, but I don't know if you want to tackle
Yeah.
it.
um Yeah, I think that it's really about creating that timeline we discussed earlier,
Mhm.
where, what were those symptoms? When did they start? Is it completely correlated with when you had mold exposure, or did it start after, or did it start before? That can sometimes give you information. But when it comes to mental health, like working with a therapist to really take a look at that could be helpful.
Yeah, and also like the environmental testing can be a huge piece of that. I mean,
Yeah.
just to test where you are, to see either rule it in or rule it out. So, and then let's see, what if you come from generations of poor people that have been exposed to mold for generations? Can you develop immunity? I don't,
I'm sorry, I don't
I,
have an answer to that
I don't know
one.
the
That's
answer.
interesting. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. It might be interesting to ask someone who's been studying mold and mycotoxins and doing research on them. They might have an answer. That's a really interesting question. I'd be curious to find out the answer though.
Yeah. Um, it seems like all mental health professionals should be aware of mold toxicity and this link. Is this included in their continuing education? So glad you're sharing about it.
No, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I had to go through this myself to to become educated on it. I had to become the practitioner I wish I had for this exact reason. However, I am going to be creating at some point, I just haven't had capacity, courses for mental health practitioners, to increase awareness, because even myself, I couldn't find someone who understood this from a mental health perspective. So unfortunately, no, not even trauma actually is, we're not trained in trauma in grad school. For those who don't know, this is education you have to seek post graduation. Yeah.
And so, yeah, nobody's going to advocate for you. You have to advocate for yourself for sure. I'm just going to skip through. How does someone stumble onto this field? And when studying, is there a specific school that specializes in mold studies? You kind of answered that.
No, this is lived experience, but hopefully, let's hope that one day it's not the case.
Can I purchase that journal, your journal? You want to tell people where to find the Begin Within?
Yeah, it's on the website, and you can use, I think it's journal 10 for 10% off. And if you sign up for my newsletter, you get like one sheet of like a gratitude journal as well, and that has a discount in it.
I'd like to know if Christina ever moved out of her home that had mold or if she remediated it. I'd like to think I can feel in my home. We have remediated it pretty extensively. What do you like for mold testing? Thank you.
So I was in an apartment. So in my case, remediation wasn't really an option. Had I owned, it might have been a different story. So yeah, I don't know what was the other. So I did not remediate it. I moved into a home that tested very, very low. But I know plenty of people who've remediated their homes and healed in them, if that helps. Plenty.
Yeah. Me. I did that.
Yeah.
We remediated. Yeah. We just, it's just who you work with, and be very particular about how they do it and the products they use. Just make sure that they're not introducing toxins to get rid of toxins. that was a big thing for me and my family. But yes, you can remediate and heal. Do you work with people in New York?
I do. I offer coaching outside of the states of California, Oregon, Washington, and Colorado. But coaching is going to be limiting, as I had mentioned before. We can do somatic and trauma-informed practices, but it won't be as in-depth as it would from, licensed therapy. So it's something to keep in mind. And it's all listed on my website, kind of the differences.
Okay. And her, yep, there's the article link, and her website's there, and she's got an award-winning blog too, that we linked to, you can go down. I mean, like, I ended up on that website and was there for like almost 2 hours just reading. So, those are all great resources. I'm trying to get some of these last ones.
Sure.
It's, let's see, with mold toxicity, it is my understanding that repeated exposure. Oh, sorry, that was answering the repeated exposure does not.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. All right. Well, we will. We might have to have you back, Christina.
I would love
kind
that.
of ran out of time.
Part two.
But yeah, this was
Let's
awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Hopefully you'll read the article, and if you need to connect with Christina, you can always reach out to us and we'll send you the links directly. So thanks for joining, and thanks for being here, Christina. This was awesome. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care. Thanks for all your questions.